we have a major break tonight to tell you about in the death of a North Texas teen. It was supposed to be a fun day of fishing for 3 young men at Lake Ray Hubbard. Instead, it turned deadly after the group jumped in to swim, and 18-year-old Daniel Erving never resurfaced. Now, months later, police have arrested a 19-year-old they say tried to cover up and hide what actually happened that day. Fox 4's Alex Boyer picks up our top story from there.
2 teenagers in Texas didn't go to prison for killing their friend. They went to prison for what they did to his phone while he was drowning in the water. While an 18-year-old went under at Lake Ray Hubbard and never resurfaced, his friends were not dialing 911. They were tossing his clothes into the tree line, throwing his cell phone into a roadside ditch, and deliberately wiping every single text message from the device. Now, thousands of miles away, a virtually identical digital void sits at the absolute center of the Nolan Wells investigation. If a wiped phone was enough to land 2 Texas teenagers felony evidence tampering charges, it exposes a critical reality for everything unfolding on Horn Island. An official ruling of accidental drowning does not grant legal immunity for what happens in the aftermath. Public perception routinely collapses 2 entirely separate legal standards into a single question, but Daniel Erving's case in Dallas proves how dangerously flawed that assumption actually is. The Dallas County Medical Examiner definitively classified Daniel Erving's cause of death as an accidental drowning. Yet, felony indictments were handed down anyway. Why? Because while sudden panic might explain why a frightened teenager fails to render immediate aid, panic cannot stretch to cover a calculated multi-step sequence of evidence destruction. Driving to a separate location, discarding physical belongings in the brush, and executing a targeted data wipe requires deliberate, conscious intent. In forensic law, a death can be 100% accidental, while the actions taken by witnesses immediately afterward remain 100% criminal. To understand why this legal distinction is so vital right now, we have to examine the exact mechanics of how evidence tampering charges are built from the ground up. In Texas, under Penal Code Section 37.09, a person commits an offense if, knowing that an investigation or official proceeding is pending or in progress, they alter, destroy, or conceal any record, document, or thing with intent to impair its verity, legibility, or availability as evidence. Notice what is missing from that legal definition. There is no requirement that the person caused the underlying incident. There is no requirement that a homicide occurred. The state does not need to prove you pushed someone into the water, held them under, or played any active role in their physical demise. All the state needs to establish is knowledge of an impending investigation and a deliberate act to obscure the truth from investigators. When Lucas Rauer sat across from Dallas police detectives, his own words sealed his fate. He explicitly admitted that he deleted his text messages with Daniel because he knew the police were going to get involved, and he did not want to get in trouble. That single admission handed prosecutors the element of criminal intent on a silver platter. It bridged the gap between passive fear and active, illegal concealment. In many cold cases and suspicious death investigations, that admission is the hardest piece to obtain. Without a direct confession, digital forensic investigators must rely on metadata, timestamps, system logs, cache files, and server backups to prove that data did not simply vanish on its own, but was systematically removed by human intervention. This brings us directly to the material inconsistencies currently surrounding Nolan Wells' phone. When Nolan's family retrieved his device, following his disappearance on Horn Island, they discovered a complete digital void. There was no cached media, no saved conversations, and 0 Snapchat records from an 18-year-old college athlete who documented his entire life in real time. A missing digital footprint on a consumer application like Snapchat can always be argued away by defense attorneys as automatic cache expiration, account logging errors, or weak cellular reception on a remote barrier island. But to cross the threshold from a family's agonizing suspicion to a formal felony charge of physical evidence tampering, the joint forensic examination now underway must establish manual, targeted deletion during the exact window that device was outside of Nolan's personal possession. Consider the timeline of events on Horn Island that has left investigators and the public asking critical questions. Nolan Wells went to the remote barrier island off the Mississippi coast with a group of friends on July 4th. He did not return with them. His body was recovered from the water 2 days later. According to statements provided by his friends, Nolan chose to stay behind on the island voluntarily, planning to catch a ride back with someone else later. Yet, when he was allegedly left on that island, he did not have his cell phone. He did not have his vehicle keys. Both of those critical personal items turned up later in the possession of his friends, not on his person. Think about that detail through a practical lens. How many 18-year-olds in modern America voluntarily choose to remain isolated on an offshore island without their primary means of communication, without their keys, and without a guaranteed ride home? It is a detail that immediately defies common human behavior. And it is precisely why the family refused to accept early assertions that this was a straightforward, uncomplicated accident. Furthermore, the reporting timeline contains significant gaps that continue to draw scrutiny. Around 11 p.m. that night, one of the friends placed a call to the Coast Guard. However, local law enforcement, specifically the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, did not formally request Coast Guard assistance until roughly noon the following day. That represents a 13-hour delay in official multi-agency coordination during the most critical search and rescue window. Despite this massive delay, and before the state's own official autopsy results had been completed or returned, early public statements suggested no foul play was suspected and pointed toward an accidental drowning. This early declaration by authorities is a recurring failure point in high-profile missing persons and suspicious death cases. When an agency signals early in an investigation that it considers an event to be accidental, the entire trajectory of evidence collection can be compromised. Search warrants for digital records, immediate forensic imaging of phones, detailed witness isolation, and comprehensive scene preservation are often delayed or treated as low priority because the operational assumption is that no crime occurred. By the time a family hires independent representation and forces a second look, days or weeks have passed, giving anyone with a motivation to clear their digital footprint a massive head start. That digital anomaly is further compounded by a critical, documented breakdown in witness statements. For weeks, the narrative surrounding Nolan's final minutes existed only secondhand, filtered through social media threads, third-party posts, and distant relatives attempting to control the narrative online. That changed when a key witness, Katie, the last person confirmed to have spoken with Nolan on the beach, sat down face-to-face with his mother, Christine. The friends who brought Nolan to the island claim he explicitly chose to stay behind on the shore to remain with her. But Katie's direct account to his mother states the exact opposite. Nolan expressed a clear, unequivocal intention to return to the boat and rejoin his group before they departed. Crucially, Katie did not physically witness Nolan step foot on that vessel. This is not a direct eyewitness contradiction of a physical act occurring. It is a profound conflict of stated intent. It shifts the central investigative question entirely. The core mystery is no longer whether Nolan wanted to leave the island. It is what occurred in the unaccounted-for window between his stated intention to leave and his death in the water. When you analyze statements in forensic investigations, conflicts of intent are major red flags. If person A says, "I am going to get on that boat right now," and person B says, "Person A told me they wanted to stay on the beach all night," someone is either misremembering, misrepresenting the truth, or concealing what actually transpired in the intervening time. In a court of law, establishing this conflict forces investigators to look for objective, non-human tiebreakers. And what is the single most reliable non-human tiebreaker in the 21st century? The digital evidence. Cellular location pings, app usage records, Bluetooth connection logs between phones and boat audio systems, and automated cloud sync timestamps. While local authorities initially gestured toward an accidental drowning before pathology reports were finalized, an independent autopsy conducted by Dr. Roger Mitchell revealed a striking physical anomaly, a 12 by 8-inch focal area of deep tissue red discoloration on the back of Nolan's skull, accompanied by 0 external skin lacerations or underlying skeletal fractures. This finding represents a textbook example of forensic ambiguity. A 12 by 8-inch impact area is substantial. It covers a significant portion of the posterior cranium, but physical size alone does not establish traumatic foul play. Discoloration of this magnitude can result from direct blunt force impact from an object or surface, but it can also occur naturally through post-mortem livor mortis, the gravitational settling of blood in a body submerged for days in warm, shifting Gulf waters. To complicate matters further, the procedural execution between state and independent autopsies introduced additional layers of unanswered questions. Because the state medical examiner retained critical anatomical structures, specifically the trachea and the hyoid bone, prior to the second examination, independent pathologists were legally and physically restricted from conducting a full, unhindered examination of the neck organs. The hyoid bone, a small U-shaped bone located in the neck, is one of the primary anatomical structures examined by forensic pathologists to determine if strangulation or manual force was applied to the throat. When that bone and the surrounding tracheal tissue are removed during an initial state autopsy and not available for an independent review, the second pathologist cannot rule in or rule out specific mechanisms of mechanical asphyxiation. This is why toxicology and complete forensic pathology reports carry so much mathematical and legal weight in determining the final manner of death. Drowning itself is what forensic pathologists call a diagnosis of exclusion. When a body is recovered from water, fluid accumulation in the lungs, pulmonary edema, is a standard physical finding. However, pulmonary edema can be caused by drowning, but it can also be caused by drug toxicity, sudden cardiac events, or central nervous system trauma. A pathologist cannot simply look at fluid in the lungs and definitively declare drowning without first running exhaustive toxicology panels to rule out chemical incapacitation or poison. Because those complex chemical analyses take weeks or even months to process in state crime labs, the entire legal classification of the case remains frozen in place. With both independent and state pathology findings pending complete, definitive toxicology reports, the entire case rests in a state of technical deadlock. The stark divergence in how these two cases unfolded reveals an uncomfortable truth about modern justice. Procedural speed is directly correlated with public pressure and external resources. Daniel Erving's mother endured 3 agonizing months of institutional silence in Texas before advocacy groups, local community leaders, and independent legal representatives forced local law enforcement to process the physical evidence and file formal charges. Nolan Wells' case, by contrast, drew an official FBI field office statement, national civil rights intervention, an independent autopsy funded by prominent public figures, and a formal grand jury referral within 14 days. The contrast proves that smaller jurisdictions routinely treat post-incident evidence destruction with procedural caution or outright dismissiveness, until external public scrutiny makes inaction impossible. Why does this happen? In many mid-sized or rural sheriff's departments, resources are severely limited. Conducting a full digital forensic audit on a cell phone, retaining certified computer forensic examiners, utilizing specialized extraction hardware like Cellebrite or Oxygen Forensics, and issuing legal subpoenas to tech giants like Snap Inc., Apple, or Meta costs thousands of dollars and hundreds of man-hours. If an agency defaults to a quick assumption of accidental drowning, those expensive, time-consuming investigative tools are rarely deployed. It is often only when high-profile legal counsel steps in and the media spotlight turns on that agencies reallocate budget and personnel to perform the deep forensic work that should have been conducted on day one. Look at the role civil rights attorney Ben Crump and advocacy organizations have played in both of these matters.
6. Preliminary findings, and this is significant. Focal area of red discoloration in the soft tissue of the back of the head, the occipital region. He said the etiology is unknown at this time. He said the body was received after the initial autopsy. He said the body had marked decompensation. He said corona incision of the scalp, brain removal, Y-shaped incision of the anterior torso, and he talked about the organs being removed as is common, accompanied in the body cavity. And that when you have an autopsy, the organs are removed from the body and they're dissected and examined, and then they're put back in a bag within inside the body. So when they're buried, their remains will all be with them. But in this occasion, if there's going to be a second autopsy, then the organs are put in the body cavity so the second pathologist could be able to examine the organs as well. Very significant for Dr. Mitchell was that the anterior inner neck structures were absent, not received with the body, and we'll explain that in just a minute.
By holding national press conferences, framing these cases within broader structural patterns, and demanding state and federal oversight, they alter the calculus for local prosecutors. A district attorney who might otherwise accept a brief, preliminary sheriff's report is suddenly faced with national scrutiny, public demands for grand jury reviews, and independent expert testimony that directly challenges official narratives. In Nolan's case, the Jackson County District Attorney's Office announced that the matter would be presented to a grand jury, a necessary step to ensure that a panel of citizens, rather than a single police chief or sheriff, evaluates whether probable cause exists for criminal indictments. Now, let's break down what a digital forensic extraction actually looks like and what experts will be searching for when Nolan's phone undergoes its mutually agreed upon inspection. When a user taps delete on a smartphone, the file is rarely erased immediately from the device's physical flash memory storage. Instead, the operating system simply marks the storage sector containing that data as available for overwrite, until new data, like a new video, photo, or downloaded application, writes over those exact memory blocks. The original data remains fully intact in the unallocated space of the phone's storage. Professional forensic tools operate by performing what is called a physical extraction, or a bit-by-bit image of the device. This process bypasses the user interface and reads the raw memory chips directly. Forensic examiners can extract cached database files, system logs, deleted SQLite database entries, system timestamps showing when applications were opened or closed, and connection logs showing when the device interacted with cell towers or local Wi-Fi networks. In a case involving potential evidence tampering, examiners will be looking for three key evidentiary markers. First, they look for time-stamped deletion events. Did a mass deletion event occur between the hours of Nolan's disappearance and the time the phone was surrendered to family or police? If database logs reveal that dozens of photos or messages were systematically scrubbed at 2 a.m. on July 5th, while Nolan was missing in the water, that temporal link provides powerful circumstantial proof of manual tampering. Second, examiners look for application artifacts. Even if messages are deleted within an app interface like Snapchat or iMessage, the underlying operating system often retains thumbnail caches, system notification logs, and temporary swap files. Forensic software can reconstruct fragmented images and message threads from these secondary system folders, proving not only that the data existed, but revealing its exact contents. Third, examiners compare cloud backups against physical device storage. If a cloud backup executed automatically at 10 p.m. shows an active media library, but the physical phone retrieved the next morning is completely empty, the delta between those two data states establishes that an intentional wiping process took place during that specific time frame. If the joint extraction in Nolan's case uncovers these exact types of digital footprints, the entire legal dynamic changes instantly. The defense can no longer rely on arguments about spotty island reception or automated app behavior. The focus shifts entirely to custody and control. Who had physical possession of the phone during those critical hours? Who had the passcodes or access to the device? And what was their specific motivation for destroying that data before authorities could review it? This brings us back to the core lesson established by the arrests in Dallas, Texas. The public often operates under the false belief that without a body showing obvious signs of violence, without a clear murder weapon, or without a direct confession to a violent act, no criminal charges can stand. But the justice system has powerful, standalone mechanisms designed specifically to punish those who subvert the truth. Evidence tampering is not a secondary consolation charge. It is a serious, third-degree felony that carries real prison time. It reflects the law's fundamental intolerance for individuals who take it upon themselves to erase facts, dispose of property, and obstruct justice while a grieving family searches for answers. Whether the friends present on Horn Island simply panicked, whether they made poor decisions in the fog of a chaotic night, or whether something far more sinister occurred in the dark, one truth remains absolute. Choosing silence, disposing of personal belongings, and clearing digital records is never a legally protected response to a tragedy. The law demands accountability for the actions taken after a person disappears beneath the water just as strictly as it examines what happened before. The resolution of the Nolan Wells investigation will not hinge on public outrage, press conferences, or viral speculation on social media. It will hinge on the binary, unassailable output of a digital forensic extraction. If the joint extraction reveals that data was manually erased while the device was in the possession of third parties, the cause of death ruling becomes legally secondary. Daniel Erving's case established the precedent. You do not need a homicide charge to secure a felony conviction when a cell phone is weaponized to conceal the truth. We are going to keep tracking every single update as this joint phone inspection wraps up, as the dual toxicology reports are officially released, and as the district attorney prepares to present this case to a grand jury. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next deep dive into this ongoing investigation. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next update.